The hottest topic for Falcons fans this offseason is how the team will spend its limited salary cap dollars. With that in mind, an ESPN writer has said the team cannot afford tight end Austin Hooper. We'll talk about why next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
So happy President's Day to all of you. Thanks for being here with us. AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Hopefully you're getting a chance to have a day off, and if you are, well, we appreciate, as I said, you spending some of that time with us. We will do today what we have been doing now for a while, continue to figure out how these pieces fit together for the Atlanta Falcons during the offseason. Before we get into that, though, Chuck, hope you had a great weekend. Good to see you back over here. I know this is a little bit different time of year for you. You know, you're not kicking back and relaxing. You're grinding in the gym every day, getting guys ready for the draft, getting guys ready for college. That's what you're doing right now.
Yep, just came from the gym right now, so I rushed out of here. I didn't get my usual college shirt. I've been in the gym. Brandon recognized I'm not quite as fresh smelling as I usually am.
I recognize that for sure.
I got a little gym smell with me right now, but look,
I means you've been working hard.
Yeah, I have been. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, my usual assistant, Coach Dez, you know, wasn't putting in the work like he usually does, you know, so he's close by. He comes in for the team. No, I'm just joking. But no, I went to a gala this weekend with the Gwinnett Medical Center.
Did you really?
It was a gala that was
for you
charity.
Still living that life, man.
Man,
after
look,
all these years, still living that life.
I'm a Gwinnetian.
Yeah.
Hardcore Gwinnetian, but I did that. My son
Did you get dressed up? You dressed the nines or something like this?
I got to bring it in on Friday. I was G'd up.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. That's good to know. Well, we're glad to have all of you with us. Appreciate Miller Lite for making it possible. Of course, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great and it's just 96 calories. And Chuck, I want to start today with the topic that we've been on now for a good bit of time, and that's the future of a lot of these key free agents for Atlanta. And I think primarily the name we've mentioned probably more often than any other is Austin Hooper at the tight end position. Now, I've made it pretty clear, and I think that, Chuck, you've agreed, that Atlanta needs to find a way to re-sign Austin Hooper. I don't want to envision this offense that was not, let's face it, one of the best in the NFL this past year, taking a step back if it doesn't have a proven veteran like Austin Hooper. I think that could be a problem. However, it is fair to point out that the direction, the trend seems to be moving as of late is the notion that Hooper will not be back in Atlanta in 2020. Let me give you a very, very stark statement from ESPN's Bill Barnwell, a guy that I respect. I think he does a good job covering the league. He obviously understands the analytics of all of this, and he makes the comparison to Hooper and Vic Beasley, who the Falcons just jettisoned. Here's Barnwell from ESPN saying, in a move I've never seen, the Falcons publicly announced before free agency even began they weren't going to negotiate with Vic Beasley. As tough as it might be, Atlanta needs to pursue the same track with its starting tight end. Hooper set career highs in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns despite missing 3 games in 2019, but the Falcons already have too much committed to the offensive side of the ball. This is a team that already has 4 players making top-tier money at their respective positions. He means Ryan, Julio, Mack, and I guess Calvin Ridley will be the 4th, and has 3 recent first-round picks. Obviously, Ridley's one of those, along with Lindstrom and McGarry. This team, by the way, Matthews is the other expensive guy, but nonetheless, this team really needs to make the assets it has left and commit them to fixing the defense, and that means letting Hooper leave. That's a very, very specific statement. There's not a lot of room for equivocation with that. He says Atlanta needs to take the Austin Hooper money, spend that on a defensive-type guy, and just trust the offensive pieces that you have are going to be good enough to get it done. What do you think of Bill Barnwell there?
I think Bill Barnwell is wrong. What I think is, the first thing I want to say is restructure. I need those big wigs that he talked about to restructure contracts, meaning give them a lot more money up front, and then you'll have a chance, you know, from on the back end to basically give it to someone else. Now, here's what I'm saying. With Vic Beasley, Vic from the last couple years was absolutely suspect. Vic Beasley didn't live up to what that number was in the draft. Vic Beasley was just average, and Vic Beasley needed to go somewhere else because it was time. Number one, if there was a public enemy number one in football, it'd be Vic. Yeah. All right, so Vic needed a change, and out of respect for showing some grace, you know, Vic he needed to go. All right, now Hooper, we just saw he had career highs and everything, touchdowns, yards, catches. He goes to his 2nd Pro Bowl. You develop this dude, and you're gonna let him walk when his best years are ahead. Now, I'll say this. Now, let's not have let me give you this. Revisionist history is a problem. All I know is the first 7 games, there was about first 4 or 5 games where Julio didn't have not one catch.
Right.
Hooper was getting 100 yards almost every week. I know because he was my fantasy guy, right? And he never let me down. All right, so when you're looking at this situation here, you got to figure it out. When you got a young gunner, you got a young stud, you got to figure it out. And to me, it starts with all those OGs that we talked about getting that money, need a restructure. And it starts, in my opinion, with Julio, Matt. Not much is Grady, but I would absolutely talk to those guys and see how we can help keep this young tight end our star here.
I agree with what Austin Brown says in our YouTube comment section, saying, I'll say we need to keep Hooper. Matty Ice and Julio aren't getting younger. We need as much firepower and offense for Matty Ice. And I think that's probably true. And the other thing is, when you compare the money that you would spend on Austin Hooper, now if it gets up to like that $13 million a year number that was quoted the other day, I don't know what you do about that at that point in time, but let's just sort of assume that the number for Hooper is somewhere in the ballpark of what we kind of imagine to be prior to this. It may be 9 or 10 million, maybe it doesn't stretch to that $13 million per year number. But the money that you spend on Hooper, theoretically, is money that you pretty well know what you're getting return on. Whereas if you let him go and then try to spend that money on free agent, how many teams have solved their pass rush issue through free agency? I mean, this is one of those things where when you try to like go and it's almost like trying to copy off somebody's paper when you didn't do your homework. You know, if you try to go and buy somebody else's player to come in and solve your problem, I mean, there's a long list of NFL teams that have, tried to spend big money in free agency on that defensive line to solve that pass rush issue. It doesn't often work out that way. Whereas the money you spend on Hooper, even if it leaves you a void with your pass rush, and it will, at least you know what you're getting for that money. You're paying to retain your player. You know what you're getting there. And I agree with what Austin said here on YouTube. Just given what you've already got invested in Julio and Matt Ryan, you can't afford to only give them part of an offense because these are their final prime years. However many numbers of years it is, 1 more, 2 more, 3 more, whatever, these are their final prime years. And I think you want them to have as much firepower as you can possibly have.
And I think they need that kind of firepower, particularly when you look at the teams that are really successful. Look at the Super Bowl. Both of those guys had stud, they had stud tight ends. Now, here's my thing. All right, let me just talk frankly with our Falcon fans. And I want this, whoever this person, if this is you, you hit us up on Facebook, and I want to see what you got to say on YouTube. After Tony Gonzalez, everybody kept saying that Matt needs a tight end.
Yeah.
It was universal on the radio, maybe not everybody. Well, if you want to fess up, hit me up then. But there's that person right now that for years said that, man, Matt always does better with an outlet. He just kept checking down every time. So now Matt don't have to check down.
Yeah.
Right? So he's throwing to his tight end. But there are a lot of people out there that, they really kept saying, we need this tight end. So from my opinion is, the guy, we don't need him to go 80 yards. We just need him. It's 3rd and 5. I just need you to do a simple curl and get 6. So when you look at the value in money, you got to look at it in first downs and touchdowns in the red zone. Oh, but we didn't score good in the red zone in the last couple years, right?
Right.
Hooper did. So to me, his dollar figure, and again, I'm not no capologist.
Right.
Everybody throwing numbers around, but to me, Hooper,
Chuck knows how to count his own money, but he doesn't know how to count anybody else's money.
That means I know how to count nothing. I'm broke. I'm trying to get your money. I'm going to ask BJ. I'm trying to get a raise. Shout out to Miller and BJ. Anyway, I'm paid very well. All right, but look, between 8, to me, this is, 8 to 12 million. 10 is going listen, I just think, man, the number's going to be high because the premium, and I think if they don't get Austin Hooper, I think we're going to be surprised how much he does make on the open market. The cap's going up. The league is paid, so the players need to get paid.
So Rocky Ramsey on YouTube says, Hoop's going to command way too much money. Let's just get a quality tight end with one of our 2 second-rounders. So if you really listen to this show every time we're on Monday and Friday at 1 p.m., we have spent those 2 second-round picks 50 different ways, whether it be running back, cornerback, defensive lineman, whatever else. And Rocky's point here, you say, well, if you just get rid of Hooper, then you use that second-round pick on a tight end. Here's one of the things that I think that Falcons fans ought to be paying close attention to, and I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be realistic. Is there a chance that Atlanta just has too many offseason needs? Because I'm going to read you something later on the show of, draft guy says, hey, if Atlanta's going to be better, they got to have a better situation at cornerback. And then this other draft guy over here says, hey, if Atlanta's going to be better, it's got to have a better situation with its defensive end, especially with Vic Beasley now gone. Third guy is going to say, hey, if Atlanta's going to be better, it's got to have a better situation at running back. You've got to get rid of Devontae Freeman. There's only so many draft picks to solve so many problems, and plus, just the simple math says not every one of these draft picks are going to really hit on a contributing player. You start to wonder when you think about all the different ways Atlanta needs to spend its draft picks, is this an offseason where they just have too many holes to fill?
Julio, Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
That's big money, right? Just between them 2 guys. Think about how much money they command, almost, $300 million, something crazy like that?
Yeah. Ryan's cap figures 30-plus this upcoming year.
Wow. But you make a good point. As much as we want Hooper, there might be some guys that they just can't bring back. You got Devondre Campbell. We know we need help at safety and corner, depending what happens with Keanu Neal. We know we need a corner, right? So, but then you got linebacker. Look, we got Deion Jones. You got Devondre Campbell that's not under contract, but who's the other guy?
Right.
You know what I mean? There's still another guy you need, but we ain't even talked about the edge rusher because just from my opinion, we need 2 edge rushers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going in this year counting. I like Tack's potential still.
Yeah.
But, man, Tack has had 2 shoulder injuries, and every time, it seems like every time I see him going down, he's throwing the shoulder up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many needs to fill, and now we got to get what? Grady Jarrett, someone? So, you know what? We got a lot more building, I think, than people really think when you look at the entire picture of this Atlanta Falcons team.
Let me get a few more comments. Shara Floyd says, we definitely need Hooper. People not understanding how hard it is to find a tight end. Redo Matt Ryan's contract if you need to. TJ Tyner also supporting Matt Ryan in the comment section. Roderick Scott says, what if Atlanta trades further down the draft? That's a great idea for me to sort of stockpile more of those draft picks to fill some of these needs you have. Now, sometimes it's kind of hard to find that dance partner to move up to your spot, especially if that big run of quarterback has already happened. You really need a quarterback to be available for somebody to move in that 16th spot. At one point in time, I thought that Tua Tagovailoa might be banged up enough that he could conceivably fall to your range, and then all of a sudden you really could potentially strike up a big trade. As it stands now, though, Tua doesn't last past the top 5. Does Herbert from Oregon last that long? Even he's probably gone before then.
Yeah.
He could go to Carolina at, 7 maybe?
Yeah, 7.
Kevin Knock Turner also brought up a really good point too, Chuck. He said that people want to pay all these defensive players, but they don't want to pay a Hooper, who's one of the best tight ends in the game. I don't think he's Kittle. I don't think he's Kelsey. He may not even be Zach Ertz, but he's in that sort of upper echelon of tight ends. Mm-hmm. And from that standpoint, re-signing Hooper at least would feel comfortable to me, knowing that I'm paying this money to one of the better players at his position. The very best at his position. I just mentioned a couple guys who are probably clearly better. However, in that sort of upper crust of tight ends, I don't think you could deny that. So from that standpoint, even for a little bit of a premium in this free agent cycle, re-signing Hooper at least comes with the peace of mind of knowing that you're at least getting one of the better guys at his spot.
Right. I'm still struggling with this now. We just had someone say, let's get a tight end in the 2nd round. We got a tight end that we developed him, so we're going to trade out a 2nd-round tight end for a 2-time Pro Bowler? It don't make no sense. To me, it's a price you got to pay. That's why we have Rich McKay, Thomas Dimitroff, and whoever the guys are that deal with the cap. This is where you keep your young players. You know what I'm saying? You try to work it now. If it don't work, you got to let it go.
Yeah.
If you can't get Hooper where you want, so this is one of those situations where you got to set the bar where you want for Hooper and say, this is all we can pay, right?
Yeah.
But you can't, because you got to fit other guys under the cap. But I'm not trying to trade a 2nd rounder. We're going to draft this 2nd rounder and act like he's going to become, can be good as our 2-time Pro Bowler, and the guy is still young. Man, y'all crazy for that.
Yeah, one of the things that Dustin Parks mentioned in the Facebook comment section was, well, if you let Hooper go, how about bringing a guy like Eric Ebron? The fact of the matter is, Ebron's not going to be a cheap free agent on his own. I mean, there's some lists that have him ranked pretty high in terms of available free agents in this market. If you're not re-signing Austin Hooper, then you're going cheap on the tight end. Frankly, you're not even using, if I had to guess, you're not even using a 2nd-round pick on that. It's more like a 4th-round pick type of situation. But it's not like the Ebron contract is going to be all that much cheaper than the Hooper contract's going to be, or at least they're going to be within the same ballpark of each other, and I think that Hooper's clearly the better player.
I agree with you, Hooper's a better player, because I got to watch this cat closely. I literally watch every play.
Yeah, Chuck takes his fantasy team seriously.
I'm telling you, I take it seriously, and I watch Hooper. Listen, every time the offense was out there, I was like, Hoop, man, I need you to step up. Hoop, I need these 7, man. I need these 7 points. So I'm going to tell you this. I watched every Falcons game, and I can say this. I watched every offensive play the entire year.
Yeah.
Every play. And I would watch it 2 times because we had to do the show. Mm-hmm. Austin Hooper is a legitimate top 5 NFL tight end that's worth at least $10 million. And he can be better because here comes that broken record again. We judge Austin Hooper, even though he had his career year, when we had no offensive line. A lot of people say that. Is that, was this the best year for our offensive line? Matt Ryan was sacked more than anybody in the league, right?
Right.
We had no running game, right? We were towards the back end against the rush. Our first 7 games, our star had, almost no touchdowns, 1 or 2? Mm-hmm. Our defense never stopped anyone. So to me, the jury is out on a lot of positions on this team, and that's the bad part of it. How do you evaluate Hoop when all the things that were disarray were disaster? So I hate to say that, and that some people might say, well, that's in general. Mm-hmm. But that's the facts, man.
By the way, shout out to Blake Robinson, who I believe is one of the first people on our show. This happens on almost all the shows that we do. You start off as a Facebook commenter, and then slowly a lot of folks kind of migrate over towards YouTube, sometimes just a better comment platform. Blake Robinson, I believe, started out on Facebook and has now emerged as a YouTube commenter. Also on YouTube, Sean Jones says, why pay Austin Hooper all that money when the offensive line can't hold up with Matt Ryan behind the line? He's not quick enough to get the ball to him. First of all, I think that Ryan he may not be the most fleet of foot, but in terms of a quick delivery, I think that Ryan does that pretty well. But Sean's first point is worth addressing, that if the Falcons' offensive line's not better this year than it was a year ago, then none of this matters. It doesn't matter. You got Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. It doesn't matter if you re-sign Austin Hooper. The entire organization, and this is going to sound like hyperbolic, but hear me out on this. The entire organization is going to essentially implode if the offensive line doesn't get better. You're not going to be able to bring back really anybody from the coaching staff if you're not blocking people better, if you're not scoring some more points. However, I do think expecting improvement from the offensive line is actually a fairly reasonable thing to hope for. I mean, there's no reason to think when healthy that Lindstrom's not a solution at the right guard spot. He played well there at times. McGarry did not have a great year, and I know that you've talked about this plenty before. You've even talked to guys who played the offensive line position with the Falcons, and they've shared with you thoughts on this. But the truth is that experience counts for something, and I think it's certainly reasonable to assume that McGarry will be a better player in year 2 because of the experience he got here. Yes, you've still got a vast chasm at left guard, but nobody's got 5 perfect guys along the offensive line, and who's to say you can't solve that with one of your draft picks upcoming this year? So I kind of agree with Sean's point that the offensive line may render all of this moot, but at a certain point, you've invested everything you can in that group, and you sort of got to hope they play better.
And, I'm assuming they're going to play better, right? Mm-hmm. An offensive line is about time spent gelling together. And I just think when you look at the guys, Lindstrom, McGarry, you look at Matthews, look at all these guys, I just think they got to be better. This is, to me, is a big year for those guys. It's all about a cohesiveness, right? One guy can't make the offensive line great, nor can 2. You got to have guys working together. And I believe moving forward, what I saw in the second half for the Atlanta Falcons will be the start of this year. I'm being an optimist. But I think this team and this offensive line, from what I saw in the end, I believe they're going to be more successful. And I think those 2 young guys, they took their lumps this year, especially McGarry. He took some lumps. He got swung. Matter of fact, he took some bumps.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he took a gang of bumps. But I watched him. He's tough.
Yeah.
And I just think, in all seriousness, this Atlanta Falcons offensive line is going to be better than it was this past year.
I'm going to talk about some other free agent moves Atlanta can make here in a moment. Let me get one more comment for now on this, though. Speed Falcons for Life on YouTube says, we should have never even hired Dirk Cutter as offensive coordinator in the first place. He can't scheme up for anything. So at this point in time, I'm sort of done beating up on the coaches one way or another. However, I do think it's interesting that if you go back during the season, people were all the time kind of coming after Dan Quinn for what he was or wasn't doing with the defense. And then the whole musical chairs of responsibilities became a huge topic. What's Jeff Ulbrich doing? What's Raheem Morris doing? And, what's Quinn sort of relinquishing control of? We talk defensive coaches all the time. And for the most part, it is interesting. Cutter just sort of skated on by. Nobody ever mentioned anything about anything with the offense, yet they couldn't run for anything. They weren't scoring nearly enough points. I'm not trying to drag Cutter's name through the mud, but it is interesting that back during the season when what coaches were and weren't doing was such a hot topic, people would give the defensive coaches grief all the time. And for the most part, Cutter was spared a lot of talk from a lot of the people who comment on our show.
But I'll give you credit. You talked about it.
Well,
you talked about wanting more. Yeah, you did. You talked about wanting more creativity.
Yeah.
But Dirk Cutter, he didn't get a pass. But I think in the first half, but let me tell you where people kind of backed off a little bit, because they were winning. They were scoring points, right? So in the second half of the season, his offense, the creativity was way more creative because they were scoring points.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a topic. So one of the biggest topics that's coming into this year is what the offensive coordinator brings to the table. Mm-hmm. But I always remember Shanahan when he was here. First year, he wasn't all that good. I mean, at least from the standpoint of what people didn't like what he was doing.
Right.
But in the second year, he had an unbelievable year calling offensive plays. But I just think the Falcons would be better if the progression happens like it normally does. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
right.
everybody gel better. The coordinator and Matt Ryan to gel together. I just think the jury's out, but I think it's going to be a better year. I just feel like this time the second half of the year is going to pay dividends. That's just my opinion.
Jesse Lange says, what do y'all think about Jake Matthews? My take on Matthews is that in this sort of age of hot takes, Matthews kind of defies the hot takes. He's not one of the best left tackles in the league. He's not one of the worst. He's a solid starter. And yes, he's one of the guys we referenced a moment ago who's pretty expensive. But for the most part in the NFL, all your left tackles are going to be really expensive. They all make a ton of money. That's not a great look right there.
Mike, you know you're wrong for that now. You know you're wrong for that.
You're leaning down to see a hobbled Ryan on the ground. There's probably too much of that over the last couple of years. But Matthews is sort of a solid starter. Famous last name. People expect him to be one of the best in the league. But Matthews is not the kind of guy you have to look to replace. That's one of your – you don't have a ton of answers on your offensive line. Matthews is one of the answers that you do have. Not a top 5 left tackle in this league, but also not a bottom 5 guy either.
Yeah, listen, I think Jake Matthews, he's not a problem as far as the other problems that we got on this offensive line.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
I like Jake Matthews more than most people do, but anytime you play that position in this new era of supercharged hybrid linebackers, everybody's getting whooped. I mean, you go one-on-one, you're going to kick some L's. I mean, think about these guys we're talking about. Think of the Chandler Jones and all the different great, the DeMarcus Lawrence. Who going to block these dudes one-on-one? So to me, it's a battle. But here's the big thing I'll say about offensive tackles, which is a little unfair. Offensive tackles like playing cornerback. You can't hide. When you give up a sack, it's going to go to you, even if it's the quarterback's responsibility. So when it comes to cornerback, guys who get beat deep, it's your responsibility, even though maybe the rush wasn't successful, even though the safety was supposed to have been over the top. But I just think it's a battle. I think out of those 60 plays, you might give up a sack. But when people see that one sack, oh, he's sorry.
Right.
But I think Jake Matthews is the least of our problems. I think he's a solid starter. And he, to me, he's not the problem. He's not.
I like Calvin Azel's comment on Facebook that Jake would have rated higher if he didn't have to help out on left guard so much, and that's obviously been a problem for the Falcons. Steve Lipscomb mentions Thomas Dimitroff. What about him? We're going to get to some of these potential moves that Dimitroff could make here in a moment. I also agree with Isaiah Davis, who says we don't need a tight end in the first round, nor second. We need maybe 4th, 5th rounder. I agree with Isaiah on that if you look to draft Hooper's replacement, it's probably more of a mid to late round pick where something like that happens. That's Chuck Smith. I'm Brandon Adams. This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Of course, Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. Let me give you a couple of more of these potential free agent offseason decisions Atlanta could make via Bill Barnwell for ESPN. He says you've got to find a number 1 pass rusher. He says that it could be tough for the Falcons to get Jadeveon Clowney, but Dante Fowler could be in play here. You mentioned Robert Quinn the other day.
They got Quinn in there?
He mentions Quinn here.
I'm taking that one.
Also, Jason Pierre-Paul comes up as a potential name here as well.
I like JPP, but I'm good on
I want
JPP.
a pass rush with 10 fingers.
See, you're wrong for that.
I'm just saying.
You know you're wrong for that. But I'm going to tell you how that one, because to me, Quinn's going to be the cheapest, right?
Yeah.
To me, but Robert Quinn's still a beast.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you, Robert Quinn, if you watched him last year, he can absolutely still rush the passer. But Jadeveon Clowney, I like Clowney, but to me, I mean, still got some work. Now, listen, if you're going to go for Clowney, I'm going for Yannick. And I've said that a few times. Yannick Ngakoue from Jacksonville. So you got Clowney, you got Yannick. I'm putting Clowney here, and I'm going for Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah, my thing with like Jadeveon Clowney is, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. These guys that we watched on television a bunch, we have a tendency to sort of overrate them. Clowney was famous in high school. He was a big hitter in the SEC. This like super elite recruit, so he's going to have this huge reputation. But I can't pay big dollars for a guy that doesn't sack quarterbacks, and Jadeveon Clowney doesn't really sack quarterbacks.
I mean, how many times they had double-digit sacks? I mean, he's gotten 8, 9.
Yeah.
The standard is 10. Clowney is a beast on the run. Clowney plays super hard, so there's some intangibles there that
I'm not saying he's not a good player. You're right.
He's a solid player. Solid player that can be great. But the pass rush part of it, he's not a number 1 dominant pass rusher like you want, but he's an upgrade for what we got now. I mean, I'd love to have Clowney from what we got, But, I mean, we ain't got nothing. So it's like my hands. There ain't nothing in them. Falcons had nothing on the left, nothing on the right. I'd love to have Clowney. Hey, let me just be honest. I'll take any of them. Listen, I'm taking anything right now. I mean, anything that's there. Robert Quinn, make sure we keep Adrian Claiborne again. But we got to get an edge rusher. I mean, it's imperative.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that Barnwell mentioned, this is kind of interesting, that it may be like kind of a dream trade scenario where, you franchise Austin Hooper, maybe trade him for Yannick Ngakoue there.
I'm telling you, man.
Kind of a trade scenario like that.
I
have no idea how complicated that must be to try to pull off.
Have you ever seen him play?
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic.
All right, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Compared to Clowney, there is no comparison.
Yeah.
No comparison. Yannick is on another level compared to Clowney. There he goes. And he got the hair right, and he growing the beard.
There you go.
But the mustache ain't connected yet. Still a young buck, though.
Listen, I got no problem with that. Barnwell also mentions drafting a running back and cutting Devontae Freeman. I mean, one way or another, you don't hardly see anybody that connects with our show. Like, we'll hear like a little debate back and forth about Hooper one way or another. There's very little debate about Freeman. Of all of this, he's the one guy that that $6 million, you got to have that money back.
Right.
I got to have that money back.
But I can get now this is where you get a good running back in the second round.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or, if we want to get your guy at 16, Swift from Georgia.
There's more talk about Swift. Some very nice comparison. Matt Miller, Bleacher Report, making some nice comparison between he and Alvin Kamara. Like, Swift may be a guy on the rise. Y'all laughed at me when I said this. There's a chance when it's all said and done, Swift is a prospect on the rise here in this draft.
Was he watching our show? Who'd you say? He must be watching our show.
That's what you said on Friday,
Kamara,
right?
They're the same guy. They're the same guy.
So for those of you who aren't aware, I made the case, I wrote about this at dognation.com, that if I had the choice, if I was Atlanta, of drafting the second best pass rusher, and Atlanta's going to get no better than the second best because Chase Young is going to be gone 3 hours before Atlanta picks. If I had my choice of second best pass rusher or best running back, I'm taking the best running back, which I believe is DeAndre Swift. Now, is this a little bit of a biased thing because I'd like to see Swift in Atlanta? Probably so. And yet, nonetheless, he is the number one back in the draft. Consensus from almost every evaluator. He's going to be sort of a mid-round, first-round pick. Atlanta needs to address the running back spot. It's a position of need for a player who would seem to be the best at that position. And some of the draft talk as of late kind of has folks moving in my direction here a little bit.
Oh, I think Swift is great. And I understand what you're saying because to me, when I'm looking at the edge guys, I'm liking them in the second round. Somewhere in there, you got the one at the top. But I like Swift. But I'm going to tell you this, and I've said this a few times. This might not be on topic. Boy, what happened to Etienne and Clemson? Shame, shame, shame.
Oh, yeah, for losing the national
championship.
Man,
listen, this is look. I don't know who convinced him of coming back, but if it don't work out right, he need to smack him, right?
Yeah.
Bam, man. For him coming back, that's a short fight. They would have been close. They'd have been 1-1.
Right.
But again, I like Swift. He's shifty. He's going to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, he brings excitement to the Benz. And let me tell you, the one thing the Falcons don't have enough of, big plays, explosive 20-plus plays that are kind of like the measuring stick in the National Football League. He has the ability to go the distance. I ain't got a problem with him at 16.
So Joseph Concepcion says everyone would love to see Swift in Atlanta. Kevin Brentlinger, and I think we talked about this on maybe Friday, says Dobbins is by far better than Swift, bar none. The only thing I'll say about that is, and listen, nobody watches Georgia football more closely than I do. You can't bang on Swift for the fact that the Georgia offense had some issues this year. Dobbins at Ohio State just played in a better offense that maybe makes him look like a more dynamic back. You could say the same thing about Etienne and Clemson there as well. Swift, though, I think he got stuck with a tough game plan a few times this year.
So you're saying the offense affected him?
I think
wasn't he hurt a little bit?
I mean, listen, when you're playing running back in the SEC, you're going to get banged up a little bit. I think he's healthy.
I like Swift. So I'm not going to talk about the Great Wall, but the greatest offensive line.
Yeah, listen, that offensive line didn't help him out. They didn't have a bad year, but maybe not as good as it could have had. The other thing that Barnwell mentions here, last thing, he mentioned the idea of picking up a nose guard, and that ought to be something that you can find late in this draft, right? Either spend some money inexpensive on a guy out there, go out and find a guy like that late in the draft. That ought to be something you ought to be able to do, right? I mean, because clearly we've said before, you want to put somebody that occupies a little bit more space next to Grady Jarrett.
Well, no, I see more value in that nose guard position because a lot of times you're looking for you got to find a non-traditional nose guard. You got to find somebody, number one, that can stop the run. But think about it like this. Grady Jarrett now, they just signed him to a multi-year deal. He's going to be here for quite some time. Who's going to be the complement to Grady Jarrett? Who's going to take the double teams? But what I need to see also, we can't go get a one-down nose guard at pick number, 16? Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
You can't get a one-down. You got to find somebody that can give you a little bit of push. Now, one of the big challenges this year, if Alabama fans out there, New York Jets fans, the biggest question mark, one of the biggest stories in New York Jets was we thought Quentin Williams was going to come in and instantly help us with the pass rush.
Yeah.
Quentin Williams absolutely was a disappointment with the pass rush. So Quentin is a one-down player right now with the Jets.
Right.
So if I'm the Falcons, I don't want to go there. I got to find someone, if I'm going to go that route, that can do a little bit more. You don't have to be a pass rushing Aaron Donald.
Right.
You don't have to be a big old Fletcher Cox, but I need someone that's going to be a little more than just a big old dude sitting in the middle.
But let me make a case for the other side of this just for a moment, though, because when I'm thinking about nose guard, I'm thinking about more than just doing what Quentin Williams did so well at Alabama, which is rush the passer. I'm thinking about, at times, if I'm Atlanta, my defense looks a little undersized out there. And guys like Dalvin Cook and some of these running backs really made Atlanta look suspect in the rush defensive situation this year, because when you got physical against Atlanta couldn't always answer back. So when I'm thinking about nose guard, I'm thinking about some guys that are going to dissuade teams from sending those running backs up the middle. I'm looking for a guy that can stop that run more, in addition to, obviously, you'd love to have some interior pass rush, but I need that run-stopping ability coming from the interior of my defense.
Yeah, but I want the run-stopping.
Yeah.
I want that guy to be able to stop the run, because you're right. The Falcons need that. But let me tell you what I want too. You're right. The Falcons, again, one of our best players is not your prototypical size in Grady Jarrett, but he's an absolute all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler, so speaking from Grady. But this is what I need, though. Outside of Grady, and I know Devondre Campbell looks the part, but I need them guys, I need them to get bigger. Like you said, some of that I need them to get bigger, right? Figuring out some big guys that kind of exceed the measurables. So when I'm at the bins, I want to be standing there at the tunnel being like, that's my team. Mm-hmm. That's my team. Whoa, I'm them kind of guys, man, because when you look at the New Orleans Saints, you look at their D-line, they are giants, man, and they play like it. So to me, getting a little more size will help, but it ultimately do come down to technique. But in the NFL, it's a price you got to pay for a top D lineman. You might have to overdraft him to get one at 16, a guy that traditionally might have went a little further back.
We're going to get some more of your comments coming up. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Of course, as we get ready for the start of free agency and the upcoming NFL draft, the best way to stay updated on everything happening with your team is to become an AJC subscriber. Our team, D-Led, Steve Hummer, the entire AJC sports staff, staying up to date. Mark Bradley with the columns, keeping you covered to the max on everything going on with the Atlanta Falcons. And the best way to get all of that is by being an AJC subscriber. Go to the website on your screen, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. That's subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. Lots of different choices. You can get the daily e-paper sent to your device, phone, iPad, whatever else. You want the Sunday home delivery. You want 7-day home delivery. Whichever option you choose, you can cancel anytime. As a special thank you, we're going to provide you this officially branded Falcons cooler. Of course, the AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons. We show that off with this cooler. Get yours by going to subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. So Falcons owner Arthur Blank recently interviewed by ESPN, and there's a quote that I want to read to you because I think this is pretty interesting about the kind of the future. Let me see if I can find this. I got 1,000 browsers open here. All right, so here we go. Let me see if I can get this. So Arthur Blank is asked by ESPN about the playoffs. If the playoffs were the standard for Atlanta this upcoming season, ESPN.com has this. He says, yep, I can definitely say that that's right. So you certainly take that to being that Blank expects to be in the playoffs this upcoming season, and you can assume on the basis of that there'll be some ramifications if that does not happen, which sort of sounds like what we kind of heard a year ago, but whatever. The point here is, do you think playoffs is a reasonable goal for Atlanta in 2020?
Nah, I think more.
Okay.
I think this team is built to win now. I think they spent money to, you got matter of fact, you got the two arguably the best players in franchise history on this team.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have a connection like Tom Brady when he had Randy Moss. Look who you got. So this town, think about where we were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, this team was coming off a Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Was that 2016?
Yeah.
This is the Super Bowl. So to me, the Falcons need to be in the NFC Championship. I mean, simple as that. They need to put it all together, but anything less than that, listen, and really, this is a Super Bowl type of bust type team.
Yeah.
They've given, look, the organization they've given the staff everything you want, right? And again, I believe in what Q's doing. I believe I think he's going to be a great coach moving forward. But the expectations are a Super Bowl. Just getting to the playoffs, man, please, man. The Falcons, we done did that 2 times. It's time to win.
I think you're making a great point. I 100% agree with you on this, that it's almost like you've moved the goalpost backwards by saying, I expect to be in the playoffs in 2020, forgetting the fact that you've been in the playoff. You were in the Super Bowl, then you regressed. You did win a game at LA the following year, but it wasn't all that long ago that this team expected to be in the playoffs every single year. Now, all of a sudden, getting back to playoffs will be viewed as a successful season. At least there's a way of interpreting Blank's words to mean that. There's a certain luck factor involved into making the postseason. We have huge changeover in terms of teams that are in the playoffs, don't make it the following year, teams that weren't in it, sort of find a way to sneak in. There's a chance that just the merry-go-round spins around, you kind of land in the postseason. There are a lot of sort of flukish one-hit wonder playoff teams that just being one of the 6 teams with the best record in the NFC does not necessarily indicate a lot about your future going forward. I agree with you that just qualifying for the postseason, it'd be hard for me to call that a successful year if it doesn't also come coupled with some sort of win in January.
Yeah, let me tell you something else to me a little bit with the Falcons that they have an advantage. You're in the NFC South. Tampa, that's 2 games against a below-average team. You're in the NFC South, that's 2 games against Carolina. Those are 4 games right there within itself where you should be winning.
Yeah, but you got to be careful calling Tampa below average team. They came into Atlanta and walked the dog up and down that field.
But listen, when they went somewhere else, they probably got drugged. Mm-hmm. So now listen, this is not like they're in the AFC West or something like that, where you got the Niners, you got Seattle, you got Arizona, who was some ballers, right?
See, I think this is a pretty tough division. Now, Carolina was not good. They may be better this upcoming year.
You got Jameis, who can't see. He threw 30 interceptions.
Yeah, but you already said this. Hold on, now you can't be saying this now because you told me off the air on Friday. I'm gonna betray confidence here.
Yeah, go ahead.
You told me off the air on Friday that you thought Jameis's LASIK surgery was going to make him a better quarterback.
That's this year. We ain't talking about the past.
Right.
But my thing is, are they going to keep Jameis? So all I'm saying is this: what is the quarterback's name in Carolina?
They don't know yet.
What is his name? It was Cam Newton.
Right.
So all I'm saying is this. You got Drew Brees, that's a senior member now in the NFL, they're not the same. They're not the same Saints that used to run through the Falcons. So look at the teams in this conference.
But I've already told you, division. I think that Joe Brady's going to be an upgrade for them calling plays. I'm telling you, I think Joe Brady's a smart dude. That's a smart guy.
You need to stop, man.
I'm just telling you, when you watch what happened in LSU from 2018, 2019, it was almost all the same players. He just came in, 30-year-old kid, started, hacking the system. All of a sudden they're scoring, 100 points a game.
Right. So where did they get that offense from? What team?
Saints.
You act like Joe Brady just invented the Saints offense. Look, Brandon, this offense been there. The NFL been going against that for a year. Again, I think listen, because I like Airbnb at Kansas City, I think there is some creativeness there. But number one, you know how, and this is a quarterback-driven league. You know what I mean? But I understand what you're saying. You're high on Joe, and I love Joe Brady.
Right.
He might change the game.
Yeah.
He might revolutionize the game like Bill Walsh. Can that happen? He might revolutionize the game. I'm being sarcastic now.
No, I do. But the main point, though, here is we actually, to go back to the original point, we agree on this.
Yeah.
That you can sort of randomly sneak in the playoffs, and that's not necessarily proof of anything. You agree with that, right?
You like to sneak in? You say sneak?
Sneak, you can sort of randomly, like teams make the playoff all the time. They have no business winning once they get there.
All right.
You have turnover, right? So
like the Texans, maybe?
An example of that. You and I both think that just playoff berth alone is not necessarily proof of anything for Atlanta.
No,
they need to win something.
To me, that's a step back.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Part of it is, look what we got. We got an all-pro at tight end, all-pro D tackle. We got first-rounders in the secondary, right? We got a first-rounder at linebacker. We got Julio Jones, a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Matt Ryan, who's on the outside looking in for a Hall of Fame. He's a top 10 quarterback. We had Devontae Freeman, who was one of the highest-paid players.
Yeah.
So as I look down the list,
right,
this team, anything less right now, I'm telling you, Super Bowl. I don't care if we went 0-7 last year. We come back, you don't get a pass. This team is Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but this team mentality needs to be, we got to win the Super Bowl or we're going to make some changes.
Yeah, because, I mean, that may be asking a lot. I mean, there's a space in between just making the playoffs as the second wild card team and actually going to the Super Bowl. But the reason why it's relevant to think sort of like as high in the sky as you can go is because, and I hate to be this way, but Julio Jones is not going to play forever. And Matt Ryan's not going to play forever. There's no more relevant issue for the Falcons than what are you going to do during the remaining years of the prime of two of the greatest players you ever had. Certainly greatest quarterback in franchise history, and I would say greatest wide receiver in franchise history. Arguably, you can make a case that two of the top players of any position have ever played for the Falcons are playing right now at very high-profile key spots. What are you going to do in the remaining years of their prime?
You got to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So let's look back. 3 years ago, what was it? Alex Smith was a quarterback at Kansas City. If someone would have said in 3 years that the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl, we would have probably laughed.
Yeah.
But things changed. They got hot last year. They probably should have won it in New England. An offsides penalty killed them. Then subsequently, they got rid of D Ford and went to San Fran. That's a whole other story. But I just see it. I just see when I look at the teams, and I hate to compare teams, but I think the biggest thing, we got Grady Jarrett. Defensive ends, we just got Grady Jarrett. But you got Deion Jones, guys that should be stepping up. But we do have some holes. But I don't care if they got the holes.
Right.
You got to figure it out. Because this Falcons team, in my opinion, they got enough to make a run for the Super Bowl. But they got, you just got to figure it out.
So I'm going to take a bunch of comments. I want to respond to what you said, too, because I think it's a pretty good point, is that obviously Atlanta's got a lot of issues on defense, and you're not going to get good at all 11 spots over the course of one offseason. One of the reasons why I do wish Atlanta, though, did have a higher draft pick is because I think sometimes one game-changing player at the right position can make everybody better. You've cited John Abraham before. Abraham was certainly an example of that at one point in time. I mean, give credit where credit's due. Vic Beasley was an example of that in 2016 when he had, NFL lead in sacks. I mean, sometimes one player on defense can cover up a lot of blemishes for a lot of other spots. And so if you talked about Atlanta getting way better over the course of an offseason, you're kind of buying into that in some form that somebody's going to come in, either light comes on for Takk McKinley, your draft pick is just over the moon, or you make just the most brilliant free agent signing ever, but you're really counting on one guy to come in. You see this in basketball a lot. Chemistry sport, one guy changes the chemistry of every other player. On defense, if you've got a guy who just lives in the backfield, at that point in time, the other 10 players, their job just got easier.
Well, no question, especially when a guy is playing at a high level, but they got that. I mean, one player now, I hear you, but one player don't make a defense, because if that's the case, Grady Jarrett stayed in the backfield. You know what I'm saying? So the Falcons still got ran on.
That's true.
The Falcons still got thrown on. But I just think some of the players they got also, I'm one of those people that don't look as much as the coaching in the NFL than I would look at other levels. Man, these dudes are grown men.
Right.
So to me, I look at the responsibility of the corner. So I'm looking at Oliver at cornerback. Okay, you're supposed to be deep. You're supposed to be in cover 3. You're supposed to be deep. What you doing biting on the curl route? Those are player-driven things. Man, them cats been playing cover 3 since they were in high school. So some of the things like the fit, they run a counter play. The defensive end's supposed to come underneath, and there's a technique you use, when they trap you. He squeezes. That's a player-driven thing.
Yeah.
So the schemes are there, but the players make the coaches look right too. So it's easy to say, oh man, Dirk Cutter ain't dropped some of the passes I seen. What was that game where Ridley dropped like 3 or 4 passes?
Yeah, but he's still coming on.
I'm not talking about overall.
Yeah, I know
I'm just making an example saying
I
believe the players have to improve at what they're doing, and I think they also have to be more technically sound on the little technique things like playing the trap, like coverage, things that help you get beat but also help you win.
I like Anthony Wright's point here on YouTube that if you start thinking about a path for Atlanta to the playoff and maybe even doing more than that once they get there, you and I were debating before the toughness of the NFC South. And you and I think both treat New Orleans as if they're going to be just the same as they have been, a fixture right there at the top. This is a very interesting offseason in New Orleans right now. We don't know who the quarterback for the Saints is going to be in the future. You can obviously assume that it's going to be Drew Brees, but that's not a given right now. It's also an organization that's kind of changed its identity a little bit lately. This is a much more defense, run the football team than it kind of used to be, especially defense. They're a lot more defensively led than they were when they won the Super Bowl. but there's also a chance that they kind of get caught up in the trap as they're kind of in flux here. They may take a step back, as Anthony Wright in our YouTube comment section says. Maybe the Saints do take a step back, and maybe that makes it easier for a team like Atlanta to get in the playoff, because your way of moving up has to coincide with somebody coming down, and after a handful of really disappointing playoff losses and a very uncertain situation at quarterback moving forward, maybe it is time for the Saints to regress a bit.
Well, you know what? I think they've been knocking on the door. They've been having, the last few years, they had some big upsets here and there and different things. People beat them when they weren't supposed to. But I look at the Saints a little differently. I look at Drew Brees being humble enough and being smart enough to be somewhat of a game manager. Remember, they got a draft pick coming up too. They got free agency also coming up too. So they're going to also do things that they think that improve this team. But you hit a home run, they got a defense. They got shut down corners. They got a safety that's a beast in Bell. They got Cam Jordan on the defensive line. They got multiple guys that can do this. They got Kamara, and they got Michael Thomas, the best wide receiver in the league. Yeah. So to me, I don't see the Saints regressing. I really don't, because they got the key positions and those guys that are proven. Yeah. Now, the Falcons also have the opportunity, but their defense isn't quite what New Orleans is. But this ain't the same Saints now. Right. But I think they have the ability to become the same old Saints.
Hezo Joe on Facebook says, like Chuck said, the opportunity to take over the NFC South is this year. No excuses. That goes along with something that Tony said on YouTube a moment ago of what happens if this doesn't happen. And obviously, I think Falcons fans are ready for them to be some consequences for actions. Maybe announcing that Vic Beasley was not coming back even before negotiation period began. Maybe that's an example of there being more consequences in Atlanta now. But, I do think there ought to be that sense of urgency, the way that Hezo brings it up, the way that Tony kind of alludes to it there as well, of, hey, no excuses for not going out. And even in kind of a challenging roster management year, salary cap number kind of tight here, you still got to go out there and put a good team on the field and find a way to compete.
Yeah, and I think what you said, there is no secrets. If the Falcons don't win, the Cats are going to lose their job. Right. Arthur Blank has basically said that. I ain't got to say it. I'm not making it up. It's not something that I created. It was said all last year. He gave these guys another opportunity. So it's just part of the business. Players who don't perform up to their standards, what do? They get rid of them, right? So it's the same thing with players, man. And I think Arthur Blank, to me, I told y'all he's going to bring Dan Quinn back. But see, to me, I think just Dan Quinn, man, the kind of work ethic he has, I think he's going to put in the work. I just think it's going to work out. This is just me from watching, kind of knowing what his DNA is. I just think this is going to be a good year. And I think next year we're going to say, hey, man, we're glad we kept him, because he's a coach that helped us get far.
America's poster child on YouTube says an elite running back, elite defensive end will make us 11-5. I don't think that's necessarily all that far off base. If you can draft a running back who has a really good year, if you can find a pass rusher who has a good year, I don't think 11-5 is I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation. Now, no one's going to pick Atlanta to be 11-5. They are not going to be the darlings of the offseason. You're not going to have Peter King and all these writers saying, hey, watch out for Atlanta as a team on the rise. You're not going to have that this summer. But that doesn't mean that a couple of guys overperforming couldn't produce that kind of result. It's not going to be predicted. It's not going to be anticipated. But it's not impossible either.
Well, I think they're going to get clowned. I mean, let's be real. Yeah. Everybody's going to say Dan's a sitting duck. They're going to talk about they got rid of their first rounder. They're going to talk about the defense and trying to find the right guys. But the point is, you got to weather the storm. Like you'll hear a lot of coaches say, man, we got to stick together. Everybody got to row in the same direction. I just think look, it's warranted. I think it's okay when people talk about the Falcons because the expectations of who they got is so high. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. So people look at them, well, this team is good, but they don't play up to their potential. They gave Dan Quinn another opportunity. I just think that it's a good thing, honestly, because the narrative is what it is. They know what it is. They know what it is.
Let me get a few of these. Iron Mike says, where'd he go? He basically said that, I can't find it now. Yeah, here's Iron Mike. He says, we'll never have a running game with Cutter here. Y'all can give that up. Wasting early round pick on a running back with Cutter is a waste. Obviously, this is a reference to the lack of frequency with which Cutter called running plays a year ago. Atlanta was 30th in the league in rushing yards per game. Is that a fair criticism of Cutter? Because other people have brought this up, that it's not just Freeman who struggled or whatever combination of other backs you want to mention. This was a lack of commitment to running the ball by Atlanta. Does that seem like a fair criticism to you?
Well, I don't know if it's a fair criticism because I think early off in the game, I think there is some criticism, But I watched the Falcons. They're down 21-0 in the first quarter.
That's a very good point.
It's 3rd and 4. I think I'm going to run it.
Your running plays got left in the locker room once that happened. That's a very good point.
You know what I'm saying? But also, and I'm going to go back to the players again. Okay, it's 3rd and 1. These cats been doing 3rd and 1 for the last 15 years at every level. You're an offensive line.
Yeah.
I watch a defensive lineman blow up. I watch DJ Reader from the Texans absolutely knock the crap out the center and fold him up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's mano, sometimes it's technique. So Dirk Cutter wasn't on the field.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep coming back to the players on some of this stuff because I was watching, man.
Right.
It's 3rd and 1. 3rd and 1. All of a sudden, DJ Reader, he folded up. That means knock him back. So how do I blame the Falcons' running game when they're behind? Again, we already know what Freeman. We know. Hey, we see Freeman. He wasn't quite the back that we thought he was. But look, if your offensive line is getting knocked back, and remember, you got to remember this. This first half of the season, they had a gang of times people was talking about they couldn't get 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
They couldn't get 3rd and 1. So to me, it has to do with sometime. Ain't nothing you can do because some guys built differently. Some guys, just offensive linemen, ain't built to go against some guys like DJ Reader, but they got to find out a way.
Let me get Cornell Foster on YouTube, who says it's got to be hard to be an offensive coordinator and to be creative with Matt Ryan. He says he can't move. The pocket passers are done. You have to be able to do both if things break down. You have to be able to play backyard football. So here's my defense of Ryan, and I'll totally acknowledge that in a year in which things went this poorly for the Falcons, everybody, coach, GM, owner, quarterback, whomever, everybody's open for criticism when you go 7-9, you miss the playoffs, and really you kind of laid an egg for yourself in the first half of the season. Ryan included, everyone's warranted of criticism. But it's important to remember, this is still a guy that's beaten Russell Wilson in the playoffs twice. This is a guy that's beaten Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. This is a guy that's beaten Jared Goff in the playoffs.
He won MVP.
Yeah, he's won the MVP. You know, this notion that the league has now completely moved away from what Matt Ryan does, I don't think that's quite as true as sometimes people in our comment section say it is. Now, yes, mobile quarterbacks, athletic quarterbacks, even guys that don't like run for positive yards but just sort of run and keep plays alive, you know, they've never been more in vogue than they are right now. But when you think about what made Pat Mahomes great, it's not his legs, his arm. Now, Pat Mahomes is an athletic quarterback, but Pat Mahomes' MVP candidacy is on the basis of his arm, not his legs, even though he's got that dimension. Is Ryan the most mobile, most athletic quarterback in the league? No. But this is still a league where, you know, the ability to orchestrate an offense, to deliver the football with accuracy, this is still a league where that really matters. So Atlanta's best chance of winning a Super Bowl, I believe, in the next few years is on the shoulders of Matt Ryan, throwing the ball to Calvin Ridley and throwing the ball to Julio Jones. But I don't care, you know, how much it appears the game has evolved. It has not evolved away from Matt Ryan yet.
Listen, I ain't got to apologize for Matty Ice.
Yeah.
I love me some Matt Ryan. Look, when he gets protection, he's as good as anyone sitting in that pocket. Anybody, listen, I don't care who the quarterback is. If he's getting bombarded and he's got to throw the ball every time, you ain't got no chance. Now, as far as Matt Ryan running, that's why our protection's got to be that much stronger.
Yeah.
Right? But when Matt Ryan has protection, he sits in the pocket. Hey, I think he does a great job. I like Matty Ice. He's the least of our problem. And to me, Matt Ryan is a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that's true. And as far as an example of why the Ryan-style quarterback is not completely gone from this league yet, I'll give that to you coming up. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Of course, Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it is just 96 calories. So as I said before, here's a little piece of, I guess, maybe proof that there's still room for the kind of pocket passer-style quarterback in the NFL. Have you seen the reports that are out there that the Raiders, your team, you love the Raiders. You know, they're moving to Las Vegas.
I like the Raiders.
And according to a couple of different published reports here, may be willing to offer Tom Brady as much as $60 million over the course of 2 years. So you can't say there's no more pocket passers in the league and have a guy like Tom Brady about to get $30 million a year to go be a free agent somewhere if that indeed does happen. That's fair to say, right?
That's fair to say. But I think it's fair to say ain't many. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like
No, that's
dinosaurs.
true.
Look, it's just like the dinosaurs. They did become extinct.
Yeah.
Now, look at the guy. You got the MVP, right? Who's a running fool, right? Jackson up in Baltimore,
Right.
MVP. And then you look at the Super Bowl MVP. But my thing is, there is room for pocket passers, right? But it depends if it's the right pocket passer. Blake Bortles, he's a runner and a passer, wouldn't you say? Or, you know what I'm saying, Blake Bortles.
Yeah, a little bit.
But look, I think Tom Brady speaks for
Bortles not really much of anything, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Brady speaks for itself. I love Tom Brady. I think he's still a great quarterback. But as far as the Raiders kicking out that kind of money, they still got work to do. We need a receiver. I said we.
Why are you giving the wheeze for the Raiders, man? That
I
is
love
amazing.
Me some Raiders, man. That's like the family right there.
Right, yeah. Chuck worked in Oakland.
Yeah,
they're in Las Vegas now. Would you really pay that kind of money to Tom Brady? Now, to me, whether it be a place like Las Vegas or a place like Los Angeles, he's been rumored as a Charger as well. To me, this kind of comes down to this is a marketing deal, right? You got big stadium, you need big famous name. Brady, I would think, generates some local interest there for that. This feels like a marketing deal as much as a football decision if something like this were to happen,
what
right?
About Carr? I mean, think about what do you do with Carr, who's there?
Yeah.
He made $100 million too. But me personally, I don't necessarily like the move because I like where the quarterback they got. I'm fine with that. But Brady's an upgrade pretty much over anybody. But there's another. You had the Tyrannosaurus Rexes out there.
Yeah.
They got the next T-Rexes out there. If you can't run, this generation of pass rush is on another level.
Yeah.
I can go down the list.
Sure.
I'm athletic, tall, long, and look, these guys are now, this right now, outside of the 90s with Reggie White, Bruce Smith, Warren Sapp, Michael Strahan, this is the greatest group of pass rushers ever assembled in the National Football League. They are the basketball players that stopped playing basketball, that are supercharged athletes. They're the guys that were going to play baseball, but they love the NFL as their passion. These are there are so many guys now that are in that position.
That's a great point.
Listen, think about if you're just a middle, your guy's 6'1", 6'2", and you can run, these are the guys that are playing the position. Think about it like this too. D Ford was a wide receiver.
Yeah.
D Ford, who's a beast. So to me, there's always going to be room for the pocket quarterback. I'm not saying that, but it's going to be a little more challenging if they're not the Tom Brady type.
No, I think that's a fair point. Dante Williams, by the way, who's got a nice ad pick for his Facebook profile deal, says that he doesn't think that Tom Brady's going anywhere. He mentions the Hulu commercial as a reason for that from going back to the Super Bowl. You think Brady's staying in New England?
I do.
You've said it before.
I believe Brady is staying in New England for two reasons. Number one, he's a New England Patriot. That's where the legacy is. And I just think it's just they're going to pay him and do what they need to do to bring him back. And number two, the most important reason, who wants to throw an interception, touchdown on their last play in New England? That's going to be, they're going to show how it ended. New England, to me, Tom Brady comes back. I think they're going to make some changes. And I think New England's going to be right back in the mix.
Mark Brantley says the Raiders have always been the WWE of the NFL. Entertaining to watch, but hard to believe. Hard to believe in. And I think that's kind of true. This would be a very sort of WWE-style move, bringing the big-name quarterback and just sort of hope it generates interest. The one thing that you and I have not quite been on the same page with when it comes to the Patriots is I personally believe that you can't discount the degree to which that Brady and Belichick don't like each other anymore. That ego has kind of run amok there, and Brady wants to prove that he's the one that made Belichick. Belichick wants to prove that he's the one that made Brady, and both these guys are eager to win without the other. And to a certain extent, there may be a chance that Robert Kraft wants to prove that he's the owner that was the architect of all of this, and that Belichick and Brady were mere employees of his. There's a lot. We've seen it with the Chicago Bulls. We've seen it with the New England Patriots, that once you won a series of championships, the Golden State Warriors, probably an example of this, is that once you've won a series of championships, it's kind of hard to keep all the egos happy. And I think that the Brady-Belichick ego may have, frankly, caused the Patriot situation to implode.
I'll tell you one thing, Brandon. You make a good point. I'll tell you what a lot of guys, as a former NFL player, when I played in Atlanta for 8 years, and I played there for so long, it was like, what is the grass like on the other side?
Yeah.
So from Tom Brady's standpoint, I believe there is the one thing to me that would get him to leave. I don't think it's me personally as much as do it the other stuff, because he knows he's on the back end, but to see what it's like to play and live somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was refreshing. And I always remember this, and I can tell you this. I remember Jesse Tuggle, a lifelong Falcon, the greatest defensive player, in my opinion, of all time. Jesse, sometime we'll talk about it. He was like, man, the only thing is I wish I wonder what it was like to play somewhere else.
You're always going to be curious about that,
you're going to be curious. Yeah. And to me, that's big, especially, that's a huge role with some guys who've been, places a long time.
All right, let's finish up with a little bit of draft rumor stuff. We always going to do this. Let me give you R.J. White here from CBSSports.com. His 3-round mock draft, which obviously includes 2 second-round picks for Atlanta. He's got you going A.J. Epinesa in the 16th pick like everybody else does. But I want to mention this because his 2 second rounds are different from what we've heard. He has Ross Blacklock, who is a defensive lineman out of TCU, 305-pounder, going in the second round, pick number 15, the second round of the Falcons. Kind of mentioning the idea that you would sort of step in there and do that. Actually, I'm sorry. This is a guard, not a defense line. So this would be your left guard right there. So he has Atlanta addressing that left guard spot there with that 15th pick.
I ain't got a problem with that. Listen, I
have no idea who this player is.
I want to start. I don't know who he is either.
Yeah, but left guard would certainly be something you'd want to address at some point in time.
At some point.
I mean, Blank has said you're going to, which kind of gets back to the point I said before of when you have to have a left guard and you have to have a running back and you have to have a pass rush and you have to have a cornerback and you have to have a nose guard. At a certain point in time, that's a lot of have-to-haves for one offseason.
Yeah, it is a lot to have. You know what I'm saying? But
And then finally, pick number 23. This is once again R.J. White, CBSSports.com. He's got you taking Cameron Dantzler, the cornerback out of Mississippi State. The write-up on Dantzler is interesting. Dantzler brings skill as a zone corner to Dan Quinn's defense, which has to improve in the secondary if the defense is going to be respectable in 2020. So he's got you going cornerback, a guy who's a little bit of a zone specialist.
I ain't got a problem with that.
Okay. I mean, I've seen Dantzler. Now, all these SEC guys, I've seen a million times.
I know you have.
It's like the guy that plays at TCU, I hadn't seen him as much.
I know you
But Dantzler in Starkville, I've seen him. So I got no problem with that all the way around. So the draft stuff's going to be fun as we get ready to get there.
And you're exactly right. And speaking of draft stuff, let me just real quick, I'm talking, Mike, will you give the lens right, zoom in on me real quick?
Let's get
Don't zoom too tight.
Let's get a close up
I ain't got my makeup
face,
on today. I ain't got my makeup on today.
Yeah, Chuck likes to make fun of people's profile pictures. Y'all don't zoom in too tight on Chuck.
Don't do that, man. Look, I got, sunspots, but check this out. All right, all my YouTubers out there, I got a YouTube channel. It's Chuck Smith NFL. Let me tell you why I need y'all to follow me. I need to get 1,000 followers so I can start my own YouTube live page. And when I start this page, I'm just going to be on there talking football smack. I'm going to be talking about the Falcons. I'm talking pass rush. I'm talking Tom Brady. I'm talking about Brandon and the Dog Nation.
There you go.
I'm talking to everybody, so I need y'all
We should have a media beef. That's a good way to generate some interest, something
right?
like that. Get a little media beef going.
So y'all go to Chuck Smith NFL. We're going to get it moving, but I need you guys to step up because I hadn't really done a lot with my YouTube, but now you guys have motivated me, and every day I'm going to have something on YouTube, even in between our Monday at 2 o'clock and Friday at 2 o'clock, okay?
That'll be fun.
Y'all step up for your boy.
All right, y'all do that for Chuck, and then we'll see you back here Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, AJC, Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. There'll be more draft rumors. There'll be more free agent rumblings. We'll cover them all then. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you being a part of it. AJC, Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Have a great week, everybody.